for the invitation to participate in this Fireside Chat. Very happy to see also participants joining from all across Sub-Saharan Africa. Rose, as you said, I've been working with many clean cooking companies and also microfinance institutions, impact investors across the region, supporting them in the first area of intervention, data collection and monitoring, and especially helping institutions in understanding what are the needs of their clients, and then also supporting or assisting them in how to report their impact data to their donors or investors, and working especially with UNCDF in Uganda and DRC. And from these experiences, we have had many types of challenges and also of learning opportunities in these countries, and working directly with the organizations. One, like the first, we will say, is like I can separate these challenges in different areas. One is human resources. Most of the companies, they don't have, or it's not used to have like one IT person, as it could be the case of microfinance institutions or financial institutions that are depend on software for their business. Well, with the lack of human resources or a department, then come also the challenges of processes. They're like companies that have already some track record working, or have already large outreach and have worked analog, so to say. There are like some processes that are already established that are very hard and very difficult to change from one day to the other when the new digital supplier comes in to work with them. And the third challenge, and I think one of the most important, and why this support with the Digital Innovation Challenge is key for them, is once those processes are digitized. And first thing is that organizations, companies might have already a large amount of data, and when this data is digitized, then what to do with that data? If absorb this understanding and sitting down, let's see what could be absorbed from that, or can we do more comparisons, teaching them how to do these comparisons, and for them to have the skills, make sure that those skills are within the company, not only with one person, and then making sure that those dashboards are used, that they are exploited, so that the next decisions and next processes are thought from the beginning digitally and not analog. So those as first challenges. On a second level, but also very important, is data protection and security, and making sure that they comply to the local regulations and policies. Also having access to other digital tools that can complement the data collection and monitoring. And without that access, that means also affordability to those tools, and then making sure that those human resources and barriers that there were within the company, that might be cultural, or that's the way that we have worked, or like cultural in the sense of the culture of the company, that it is not that there is a click and say, okay, from now on, we will make sure that efficiency for now is how are we managing data, processes, and decisions.
Fantastic. And thinking with those, when you have seen that click, and when you have got these dashboards working, what are some of the opportunities you've seen to date with some of these enterprises through the digitization process?
Well, opportunities are many, in the sense that, when they notice that their past performance has changed, if they can identify when that graphic when that graph change in an increased performance or decreased performance, or where they see in their data collection and monitoring, even from their narrative reports, if they can follow up what has happened, and then made the right decision or continue with that effort, or reaching out another area. And when they reach out that area, like make sure from the beginning to have that baseline of this is the market where we are going and this is where we are heading, then it is a big opportunity for them. There are other companies that have also play smart, like not trying to, now they know our staff has worked analog from the beginning on, like putting another digital solution might be complicated for them, then let's do the minimal effort. Let's not digitize the whole process, but I will take a picture of the receipt, and then that receipt, let's keep it in a folder, and that's how we're going to start like the digitization. So like this, having that those moments of inspiration, how can we do small changes so that my staff and myself as director feel comfortable with the digitization process, is a win-win for both sides.
Thank you so much. And David, maybe switching to you for a bit, from the breadth of some of these challenges we hear for clean cooking enterprises, how has your journey been in digitization for Digitization, and what are the challenges and successes you've had?
Yeah, long in one word. Maybe just very briefly about the business. We work with rural women to distribute life-improving goods, and about half of that historically has been related to cooking, as that's an obvious household consumption need across different devices, charcoal, LPG, and electric as of recent, as there are different cooking habits. So we operate in Kenya and in Uganda. We've reached about 120,000 customers so far, with over 150,000 products, and we have 150 staff across. So maybe that gives you some sort of idea of where we are in our startup journey. At the very beginning, we were obviously much smaller, one branch, one team, but we already started the digitization journey back then. One thing that's important to know about us is we provide those products, even cook stoves, on payment plans to make them more affordable to the majority of the population. So we need to track those loans. And from day one, we said, we're not going to do that on Excel. Let's look into softwares. So from day one, we had commercial microfinance software that we were working with to track basically the payments in, so mobile money payments, and then matching them to loans and track progress of repayment. So those were kind of the first tool that we started with. Then Natalia mentioned expenses, right? Is another one that at some point you're like, oh my God, it's just too much paperwork. Let's find somewhere a software that can help us with that. So we brought in some of the administration things to manage the growth of the company. And then a big bottleneck was around the inventory management. So as we were growing, we spread out geographically. Once you hit 5-6 branches with their own inventory, field staff hold inventory, that became a big bottleneck for us, and we were scratching our head for a year. And so how do we solve the inventory challenge? And I think further to that, what we're currently exploring is a bit more on data around carbon finance, and kind of things we're exploring around impact bonds and more kind of impact data that is more granular rather than let's say surveys every 3 months or 6 months. Challenges, I think beyond the service providers, a big challenge that has been continuous is ensuring that all the staff from the ground to the back office understand the need for data quality. You can have the best software in the world. If all you have is crap data, it's not going to tell you anything, and you can't make good, wise business decisions of it. And as Natalia said earlier, a lot of the value in the data is what are the insights that you get out of that data that you collect.
Awesome. Thanks, David. I just wanted to dig in a bit further on, you talked about building up over time some of the different digital you've been doing, from the financing to the admin, to inventory management. When you're having to make those decisions as an enterprise, like, what are the different maybe digital services you've looked at? What are the main criteria you've been making decisions around? What has driven that maybe increasing digitization over time? And
Yeah. So when we started out and looked at, okay, who can help us track our payments, we were more closely aligned with a microfinance model because we work in groups as compared to the solar space, where we talked to a lot of people, and whenever we talked about groups, they got completely lost, because in the solar pay-as-you-go space, you do individual sales, and the software wasn't really compatible with our business model. So we ended up in the microfinance space, which worked for us for a good while. The downsides there is, of course, they do everything perfectly on the finance and the tracking of the loans, but they do not understand Stove basics, because they give out cash and they track the repayments, but they have no idea how to deal with serial numbers, which you might need for warranty follow-ups or warranty periods tracking. They don't understand inventory or have no desire to build any inventory for you. So as you're an outlier doing asset finance, there wasn't really an interest from the software providers to say, okay, how can we collaborate and do something around the inventory? So the inventory, we spent a good while researching what is out there that could help us with that. So we had a short-term consultant also really look and talk to everyone. That proved quite hard, because a lot of inventory software that is out there is done for a PC. You have a person in a warehouse, but we have pretty much 100 warehouses across the country, because every staff member in the field is a warehouse that at some point in time will interact with products. And that proved the bottleneck for us to move through and select the software provider. Also, as we grew, our need for customization became more important. So whilst at the beginning, we bought off-the-shelf software for everything from expenses to the loan tracking, over time, you reach the edges of that software. And the software can also do a lot of things that you never, ever touch or use. So then also with the help of CCA, we were embarking on a program of insourcing and building a lot of these tools ourselves on a commercially available platform to help with all these different elements. And I think Natalia mentioned it around the processes. So digitization of processes was something that was very important for us, and we did that from the very beginning. And then we had another tool, and then you end up with 3 software tools. So you'd want to bring that in-house also for managing your costs, and you can really build the processes within that tool, the software tool, to suit you. So for example, our marketing is very much peer-to-peer. It's a peer-to-peer recruitment model, similar to what Tupperware did in the 1950s with parties and such things. And we need to track that. We need to know what's going on the ground. But it's not very common. Not that many enterprises work on a peer-to-peer referral model. So a lot of these things had to be built in by ourselves in terms of the incentives calculations and what have you. So yeah, we're still on that journey, and we've built our IT department and data department over the last couple of years to strengthen that, both on the development side and ever building more features. Literally, like every week we come up with an idea. Oh, couldn't we do this? And now with more resources, is possible to do that and tweak the systems here and there. And secondly, have a better eye on the data quality throughout the journey. because yeah, KYC is very important, not only for us doing financing, but also if we're embarking on carbon finance, that's very important. And how do you keep the data alive, especially in carbon finance? If you want to reach the customer 5 years down the line, are you still using that stove? Are we going to get any credits? If the phone number is from 5 years ago, in the speed that in Kenya people are changing phone numbers, well, the person will have changed phone number 5 times. So how do you have processes in place that keep up with that speed?
Absolutely. And so there's aspects that way that there's a uniqueness to your model when it comes to the peer-to-peer side. And then there's some of these aspects which I think we're seeing quite consistently across clean cooking, around the needs around carbon markets, the needs around staying in touch with your customer and maintain that customer data. As you look towards the future and all this data that you have, what are some of the opportunities you're thinking about with utilizing this customer data and some of the gaps you have right now in your digital abilities with that? Yeah,
I think we made good progress on tracking on what's going out out in the field. Still work to do is making that really actionable. Building more features around the loan management and better serial number tracking, which for carbon purposes has become ever more important to be more accurate there. Because yeah, you have different partnerships and arrangements, and you might get incentives here and there for reporting those serial numbers, and really working on reducing any errors is still work in progress. In terms of the opportunities, maybe beyond the carbon finance, or maybe within the carbon finance, there's an opportunity for digitization in terms of metering. I think is something that will come. There is we believe, increased demand in metered, more solid, evidence-based carbon credits, where carbon credits are of extremely high quality because you really only issue for what has been measured as the person has used this device, hopefully thereby attracting a premium in the carbon market. So there's certainly something around in the future, could our database talk with a meter out there that is metering their electric pressure cooker and their consumption? And we have that within our CRM, or at least very, very close to it, to make that available for carbon buyers and the whole process. Secondly, I think an opportunity is on impact bonds, is something that we've been exploring for a while and looking into. We are creating a lot of impact that can be measured, is measured on, let's say, currently an ad hoc basis of how many people below the poverty line are we reaching? What is the time saved that women are now spending less time cooking on their, let's say, LPG stove? It's very quick as compared to their wood fire until they get that going in the morning. Can we in the future find a buyer who would be interested in buying that impact? We participated in a pilot program around that, but I think there's a future opportunity for the cook stove sector to see how can those impacts along health and gender and time, quality of life be monetized. And let's say, okay, who wants to buy women's time? You know, any hour saved for rural women in Kenya, and it will help us grow, sustain the business, and reach more women who will save more time. So I think if systems can be well built to digitize that data and provide certainty to a potential buyer about the impact that is generated, I think that will be the natural extension of what we've seen in the sector over the last decade or so on these results-based financing. Results, okay. So now can we even go to the measuring the outputs? I think it will require scale, and it will require a good digital infrastructure to be able to do that cheaply enough that is worthwhile, but certainly something that is of interest to, I think, a lot of people in this space as well as us.
And maybe just to ask you one more question before you go back to Natalia. When you're talking about all this impact measurement, and you're talking about wanting sort of digital service providers to come in and help with that, as an enterprise, what are some of the criteria you would set for a digital service provider? Like, what are your real needs from them?
Yeah, I think these needs have also varied over time. At the very beginning, we were more or less comfortable with something off the shelf. I think now where we have a CRM that we've invested a lot of time, effort, resources, funding, we're a little bit embedded in the sense that other software providers or digital solution providers could come in through APIs. So I think integration and interoperability is a thing at our stage, where our software currently talks to, I don't know, probably 5 other things, including mobile money payments, and is integrated. So that will be something that's important at this stage. Probably also at this stage, customization, that we don't necessarily want to adapt our processes to the solution provider, but would want the solution provider to find a way to say, okay, your process works this way. Can we tweak our system and change this or that to be able to fit it into our database? Pricing probably also matters. We've seen all sorts of different pricing models out there for software. Things that we've done at the beginning, or the microfinance softwares, were very much around active loans or active customers. I think that works if you're providing financing and if it's at an attractive rate, because our loan periods are very short. So we were turning these customers over in our loan software quite quickly, and thereby reducing costs. Very common is pay by user, but very quickly becomes very expensive, as people know from all these different tools. Right? It adds up. You have a Gmail $10, and then everything is $10. What is Netflix or your Gmail or your field tracking software? Everything seems to be ending up with $10 a month. And at the end of the day, you would need to think about, okay, a field person who brings in this much revenue has this salary. How much do we pay for their digital tools around them? So the user pay is common, but it can get tricky. And the model that we've struggled working with is a revenue-based one. You've seen it in the solar space, I think, predominantly, but I think there's lots of people out there that say, okay, I have a package that integrates with mobile money payments, everything in one box, and I'm taking a cut of your revenue. We as an enterprise have never really found that attractive, because obviously the telcos already take their share of your money, and at the end you're left with preciously little. I think it works to start things off, but as you're ramping up scale, those sort of revenue models where they're saying, okay, 2% is mine, can get very costly.
Absolutely. And Natalia, maybe just you can reflect a bit on what David's been saying. We've been hearing sort of the needs. He's talking about the interoperability, sort of customization, this pricing aspects. From your side, working across enterprises, like, what do you think is like the opportunity for digital service providers, and how they need to think through these aspects coming into the market?
Yeah, well, I personally have been an advocate of microfinance and the potential that they have as vehicles for development. And I think the challenges that David mentioned about the software being adapted for microfinance and then used for clean cooking companies, I hope, as an opportunity, I hope that many digital solution providers are attending this Fireside Chat, or that have access to it for their recording, as I have seen also many software that they don't allow institutions to track inventory, mainly because regulations don't enable microfinance institutions to have inventory and sell this in many countries, and that has been also a barrier why microfinance institutions find it hard to deliver or to personally be the last mile for clean cooking companies or even also solar energy companies. But they have a big opportunity and chance now to also supply services to energy companies that are working in the same, with the same infrastructure challenges as microfinance institutions. I think more if there is more cooperation from the software solutions or more understanding on as you mentioned, inventory, managing serial numbers, managing warranties, customer satisfaction or customer reports will be a chance for them. As from our side as digital service provider, it's not that without our software institutions cannot work. We are not resource planning system or inventory management system or customer relationship management. So from our side is key to keep innovating and provide value with the information that we provide in terms of impact management. My vision and mission with the data is to enable transparency on what is the impact of enabling access to finance, access to energy, access to water, and by making this data transparent, calling for more action from investors, having more asset managers or private investors investing in microfinance institutions, in clean cooking companies, in solar energy companies, in storage water tank companies or sanitation enterprises, by showing where is this money going, and with georeference, saying this was the household that we attend, this was the before, and we have picture without improved cook stove. We have thousands of pictures of kitchens that you can not even imagine that people live in this situation. And then with the next image of satisfied, a kitchen where you will like to spend your day on, as we live, as everybody should live, and with a dignity of life, and seeing investment in this area is worth. And we're able with digital technology demonstrate that investing in this has a sense, or it will change lives, then our mission is accomplished. So from our side is more into understanding or enabling people, and also the companies. What does your data is saying to you? Now we are changing a process of doing this data collection by hand, or doing this data collection from a Google form. Let's do it in a system that it's appropriate, that knows what is the value of having that standard indicators, and then being able to report to other parties that have other language, other working culture, other interest in having specialized graphics comparing some indicators where they can knock, or where they can ask for more funding to continue their programs and expanding them. And the second opportunity that I see now, I think you asked David about the impact data that was collecting, and you mentioned, it's about the time reduced for women, or how safe it is for them. One aspect that I see valuable, and that we have been advocate from the beginning, is the efforts from the World Bank, the Clean Cooking Alliance, and Practical Action, GIZ, and DEVA, and DEF, many actors that have been working on the multi-tier framework, which is a framework that has, now it's a policy, it's already a language to understand what is, now from which level to which level are we advancing with clean cooking solutions or with solar energy solutions, and understand that it's not only by providing one little system that we are already having a success, but it's a matter of continuum and improving. And we have been working in several countries, and we are advocating of this language of standard indicators as duration, like convenience, safety is universal to everyone. And when we manage to have these indicators like acknowledged and already in the language, in the culture of the company, they will strive for more innovation in order to reach the highest level. We want to be in tier 5 or level 5, and being sure that now that the households having access to those systems have reached the maximum, or with our systems or with our solutions are in the maximum impact, and what comes next.
Thanks so much. And Natalia, thinking about, creating this environment, right, which has standard indicators where we're able to measure impact, to monetize that and create that flow of finance into clean cooking. That has still got to be, so there needs to be an enabling environment around that for the digital service providers. So if a digital service provider is coming into clean cooking, trying to understand all of this, what are the other aspects around policy or other sort of constraints you think they need to know to ease their entry into the market and enable them to be effective?
Well, for each of the country, like we are based in Germany, whereas data protection is very important, and like safety of data where servers are based. And in each of the countries, we encourage and see what are the regulations that are around data collection, in like also from financial institutions as well as suppliers, having the systems in place, the security within the institution, and how they are managing from like data in emails or data stored somewhere else, or in on servers or with our servers. So one thing to consider is the data protection and privacy. Another is intellectual property. We are fans of open source software, and encourage also institutions and companies to use this type of solutions, and teach them on how to deal with them. As David was saying, like when you use different types of softwares and you go like license by license, it will add a lot of money. But using open source software, you need those skills, and make sure that those skills are embedded, or that are stay around in the company, not that they will depend everything on one person, and then when the person leaves, then the company cannot operate anymore. So that it's also important to consider. And of course, like when supporting with institutions, and when we are talking about investment or funding, it is important to see what type of regulatory or plans there are in the country when supporting these institutions to share data, reaching out other investors. Is it possible to invest in that country, or how is it like with the foreign currency there, and what type of solutions or programs could benefit the institution? And then overall, what is the digital infrastructure in the country? With open source software, it is possible to work in areas that are completely off-grid and offline. But of course, other countries where even the branches are connected to internet, or where it is very easy to connect with the staff, like immediately it has other advantages, and then for digital suppliers, like they have to check how will be the communication and relationship management also with the institution based on the digital infrastructure that they have.
So thank you. We'll head in a moment through some Q&A, maybe sort of reflect on some of the conversations. I think there's been a big focus on data quality, and the outcome is only as good as the data that goes into it. And through that, then whatever data is going in, that data is protected, that you're understanding the environment of whichever country that's been operated in, or the regulations around data provision. I think it's clear there's often a journey for any enterprise and an aspect of starting to bring together different digital services over time. Really key, therefore, that how are we helping enterprises on that journey? How are we communicating with them in the best way possible for them? Often it sounds WhatsApp is the way forward. And then making a smooth interoperability sort of aspect as we grow these different services. And I think from both of you, there's quite a bit of excitement over maybe a future around further impact monetization, like really where can we go with this for clean cooking, and that there are lots of opportunities out there. So maybe before we jump into Q&A, just a quick reflection from each of you. What are you most excited about when it comes to data and digitization in clean cooking? Natalia, maybe you first.
Yeah, well, I think the last aspect that and key and what I'm excited about, or how we work with companies, is with a very close relationship. And David said, like, we don't want to change all our processes. We want this flexibility. I think it's key to understand what is the culture of the company and that you are working with, and seeing like what are capabilities, what softwares they already used, even for communicating, for reaching out, how do they respond to questions, how fast you respond also to their questions, and saying like, well, now if this is a repeated question, then enable a space where you keep those Q&As tracked, and having like easy methods to share information. So I'm very excited, or like also with this digital innovation challenge, to see what will be the next developments of clean cooking companies. I have seen some companies that are very advanced in terms of digitization in Sub-Saharan Africa, even using Internet of Things, or like more tracking data already from their systems, while others are very lacking behind. But with these type of programs, like having the opportunity to go to the next level. So yeah, excited about it.
Over to you, David.
Yeah, thanks. I think from my end, what I like about us being data driven is the ability to really see and deep dive into the business and what's going on the ground. As I'm in Nairobi, I get insight into what's happening in the different branches, and we can do analyses like, okay, we've introduced this new version of the model of the stove, and how does that compare to the stove that we've sold before, in terms of the sales numbers, in terms of defaults, in terms of warranties, in terms of the customer who is purchasing it, or the geography, and such things one could really analyze in detail. So it really helps drive the business and business decisions from an operational perspective. The other thing really, what you've just mentioned before around possible monetization, is this journey of digitization worth more than just, let's say, sticking to the regulation and having your proper KYC as you're supposed to, being able to track who owes you what kind of money, but go beyond that in terms of how, as an enterprise, can we attract additional funding by proving impact, showing impact, being good in tracking for various carbon programs, for example.
Thanks. And maybe that leads tracking wise into the first question, which was, how are you planning on aligning your digitization activities with the main carbon standards? Maybe, David, that's over to you as you start looking at carbon finance.
Yeah, the how to align it with the main carbon standards. Good question. I think probably really depends on the methodologies that are being used. I'm not a carbon finance expert, so don't quote me on this. But traditionally, a lot of methodologies around carbon finance have really been sell these stoves or give them away free or whatever you want to do. And then do some surveys and go back to the customers some years later and check whether they're using it, and whether they're happy and so forth, and then send the results to the verifier who will issue something. As of late, there've been a few metered methodologies that are a bit more kind of live or a bit more rigorous in the sense of monitoring, which can help with making sure that whatever you're issuing the credits for has occurred, as there is a lot of questions around the reality on the ground versus what has been issued across the whole carbon market. So I think it depends very much on the methodologies, and as we develop our programs, we would need to align it with the specific methodology rather than the big standards. So I think it's going to be very, very specific in terms of what data we need to collect at which point in time. So I can't really tell you more right now. Thanks.
And remind all attendees, do put any questions you have into the Q&A so we can answer them. The next is actually around when we started to look at digital MRV, the aspects that this will create, and there's an interest, as Dave just mentioned, in increased metering around clean cooking. There's potentially going to be less credits, whereas there's also a cost around meter technologies and its aspect. The question is actually on how can CCA influence the market? Maybe just probably slightly duck out of it, but we've got some initiatives going on at CCA called the Responsible Carbon Finance Initiatives. There are working groups across core areas really looking at this. So not just the digital side, but the breadth of the carbon finance value chain across clean cooking, from all the different stakeholders that there are in clean cooking. We've got David here who's distributing and financing cook stoves. There's those who are manufacturing. There's also obviously the end user. So really trying to look across the breadth of where the finance flows. And then when we do understand aspects around integrity and aspects around digital MRV, what is the opportunity with that? And how does that reflect across the different multi-tier framework brought up earlier by Natalia when it comes to different stoves? So I think if you are interested in what CCA is doing, you can go and look at the Responsible Carbon Finance page that we have on our website. I'll work that into the chat and really get involved with what's happening there. But there are definitely big plans afoot on supporting this area of the sector. And the next question, so there's an aspect that we're collecting a lot of sensitive data in households. And is that going to start to mean that there's data which maybe is becoming more open, and that we would be able to tell things that we don't want, shouldn't necessarily be open around households, or could be personal information that might be wanting to kept sort of private by a household? An example given is that if we're starting to track stove use, if there are people where in religious holidays they therefore are not using their stove, we're going to be able to tell, and therefore we can tell people's lifestyle and certain aspects about that individual which might be want to be held private. So what are your views on the breadth of data and sensitive data and how that could be managed so that there isn't this concern around it, and also still maybe some of the benefits from it? Maybe Natalia first, over to you.
Yeah, well, I think that's the beauty of the multi-tier framework, because it doesn't, like, not if you consider only the the attributes that it's measuring, it's only about like the perception of the household with, or like the behavior of the household with the cook stove, and also perception of safety or perception or duration of what they cook, but it's not. No, well, if depends if you collect other type of data and then you combine that data and how which type of data you collect. Nice to see you. Nice to connect again in this occasion. In this, like there are countries, and that's why the point with the policies, there is regulation that you cannot collect data in terms of religion. And that's why it's important to first have a look to this type of policies at country level. And the second, if like in our case, if we're collecting pictures like of the cook stove or of the kitchen, of course, is with the understanding of and the acceptance of the household. It's only of the kitchen space, and it's for the purpose, like it's anonymous data, and it's for the purpose of that impact measurement. And what we want to, like, with the purpose of collecting this type of data, it's only for giving an overview for the investor, or like for the organization, for the investor, what is the impact of accessing that type of solution. Of course, we encourage having security and like keeping with all the data protection standards and regulations that are in every place.
Thanks. David, to you, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, just very brief in the sense that I think it's important to get the right level of consent for data sharing from your customer, and making sure that that's not only in small print in contracts, but is also clearly orally explained, and for what purpose, right? How is that helping you acquiring that stove because of XYZ, and how that data is treated, and then within the enterprise ensuring who has access to what, and limit the number of people having access to sensitive data. And for analytics, separate the user from the usage pattern. For example, you're talking about metered devices. So yeah, those a few thoughts in terms of, as Talia said, around making sure you have the right level of security, and that may also means who has access to those data within the enterprise, or which companies are you forwarding that to, and you have the right data sharing agreements that protect that data also once it's on the other side.
If I can add, like just to close up that question, combining the previous two questions, I think that the beauty of having digital solutions for data collection and monitoring is the level of in-depth that you can have in the analysis. I can remember still the first impression that UNCDF had on the dashboards, and they said, this is a game changer. Once you see a dashboard with all the data that has been collected from the different investees or from the different companies that they are supporting, and being able to filter, having access to the historical data at the level of business impact, like the standard indicators, then you can think farther. I want to see exactly the impact of the LPG that it's being sold in this region, and then how is the performance also of that company, and being like more profound on the analysis, or supporting specific cook stove solutions, companies, regions, and so on. And when you think that digital solutions can do that from the beginning, you go beyond what Excel, or if you draft a survey in Excel or in Word, you know that you cannot go all flavors in terms of skipping patterns or providing information on cook stove A, B, C, D. Usually suppliers, they don't have just one model, they have different models. They have, perhaps they are not selling only the cook stove, but also briquettes, or having fuels or other types of programs. So if with the digital solution, you can tick all the options, also compare it to client data, like from the multi-tier framework or beyond household demographic data, and then expand the analysis. So encouraging here companies to thinking about what innovations they would like to have when thinking about digital solutions.
Thanks, Natalia. And I think a perfect way for us to wrap up. So thanks to everyone for attending today. Thanks, Natalia and David, for jumping in and being part of this fireside chat, and all the insights you've given around data and digitization in clean cooking. For those who are interested, we've got another fireside chat on Tuesday at the same time, this time focused more on finance and carbon markets. So please do join us then. For those who are on the line who are digital service providers and are interested in applying to be part of the Digital Innovation Challenge, applications are live until the 7th of May. I'll put the link in the chat in a moment. And if you're on the line and you're a clean cooking enterprise and wanting to get involved in digitization and being part of this Digital Innovation Challenge, we've also got a form that you can fill in, because we'll be doing networking sessions and further webinars throughout the year to help you get engaged. So please do stay engaged. There's lots of opportunities, and do reach out to us if you've got any further questions. We've also put the email address in the chat, and we'll send all this information out an email to everyone who's attended. So thanks so much to everyone. Thanks for attending, and have a great afternoon or evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rose, for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Rose.